Okay, perfect. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. And who better to join us today? We are joining us from Lebanon is Dr.Marwa Osman, a Lebanese university professor and host of Mideastream. Mideastream news. No, Mideastream. Actually, it's
the Mideastream.
Exactly, the Mideastream on Press TV. Sorry for butchering that. And yes, we're going to be talking about all sorts of things, but let's get into it right away. First of all, Marwa, thank you so much for coming back on the program.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure, Youri.
It's a real honor to have you on. And in fact, now I actually have to do this from now on. I should have done this a long time ago when I first started 1+1, but sometimes bad languages, bad words are uttered on 1+1. We do sometimes use the 7 dirty words you can never say on television and whatnot. And the last time I had you on, Marwa, I did drop an F-bomb when we were having a conversation about Lebanon, the corrupt NGOs which exploit Lebanon, and I dropped an F-bomb, and this is the first time I'm ever going to do this, but I apologize for dropping an F-bomb. Because you're a lady, you're somebody I completely respect, and and in your culture they don't use salty awful languages.
I do understand the differences in our cultures, and I do understand that this happens, and I truly appreciate your sentiment and your nice and warm. I don't want to call it an apology, because you should not apologize, because I mean this is something that's not considered a taboo in your culture. But I do appreciate that you're trying to make this up. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And all right, so let's get into it. So the first question I wanted to talk to you about, briefly, if it's even possible, talk to us about the current state of affairs with regards to the reconstruction of your country following the port blast. What's happening with the efforts to rebuild Lebanon?
Well, the latest things, first of all, we need to know that things in Lebanon move very slowly, and but it is rather moving. We have the Minister of Construction, who's directly related to reconstruction of the Lebanese port Beirut after the devastating August 4th, 2020 explosion. And the latest statement that he issued was that he will not allow one company to take the contract from the government. He will diversify in order to have the upper hand in case of any corruption. He doesn't want to give the whole project to, if he gives the project to one company, and that one company might be affiliated to someone in Lebanon, because this is how things go. So it would open doors for corruption. But this minister has been working hard, to be honest. I mean, I'm one who always stands against any minister, against any government, because I'm part of the people, and I always need to criticize them to make them come back to the right path. But this minister in specific, no wonder he's Hezbollah's minister. That's why he's actually working. This minister in specific, I personally know him. He's a professor at the university that I teach in, Dr. Ali Hami, and he's a very honorable and respected man, and he's dignified. And when he works, when he says that he's going to work, he does his work, and we've been feeling that. So we are still at the, sadly, we're still at the phase, almost 2.5 years later, at the phase of
Continue.
Get maybe plans to start reconstruction. As I told you, it is really slow in Lebanon, but it's going on the right path. But the bad situation would be, or the negative thing that would come out of this is in the event that the government changes, because if we have a new president, because we are now in the process of electing a new president, it's going to take some time. But if a new president is elected and a new government is formed, then the minister will lose his office and another minister will take office. And I am along with on a pre-planned restriction. Every effort that Dr. Hamid
Actually,
did.
Marwa, you tend to keep getting cut off sometimes. So can you repeat what you were saying about, so if heaven forbid this new minister loses his job, basically Lebanon would more or less start from square one again because of the cronyism and stuff like that. That's a part of life in Lebanese politics, right?
Youri, you keep freezing.
Yes. Well, yeah. We both keep having the same problem.
And I'll switch to mobile.
Okay.
Data. Just a second.
And this is why the outside world needs to help, needs to fight against imperialism so that we can all have functioning internets.
I think that should do it.
Okay, perfect. So yes, so you kept freezing and I kept freezing. So you were saying about Lebanon that if yes, that heaven forbid new elections come about and the current minister loses his job, then that means that the whole efforts of reconstruction are going to be back to square one. Due to the cronyism, due to the cronyism, which unfortunately is a part of life in Lebanese affairs, right?
Yes, exactly that.
So hopefully that doesn't happen, and we'll definitely we'll definitely have to have you back on to monitor the situation. And let's get into one of the big topics that I wanted to talk to you about, which is the issue of cancel culture and free speech. Now, last summer, the issue of cancel culture and free speech and the inconsistency that falls between those who claim to be for free speech and against cancel culture was on full display. Now, I do stand in solidarity with Salman Rushdie, even though knowing the satanic verses, it is very, very offensive for people who are very much, devout Muslims and stuff like that. But I do defend, his right to free speech, and I wish him a speedy recovery. However, when it comes to cancel culture and stuff like that, the powers to be and those who claim to be all for free speech, they don't defend the free speech, and they don't even they don't defend free speech. In fact, they even cheered on the censorship of RT, Soapbox, Maffick, Redfish, and these same people are definitely going to be cheering on any kind of censorship that I would imagine Chinese state media outlets are going to face. Some of them even support the torture and arbitrary detention of my hero, Julian Assange. And when we talk about Ukraine, there's a hit list that the Ukrainian government has on journalists and outlets who have the audacity to either challenge their narrative and challenge, and challenge the things they say. I believe a mutual friend of ours, somebody who's been on the program, Eva Bartlett. Exactly. She is actually on this hit list. And the other thing which also gets under my skin is...
so was the daughter of Alexander Dugin, Daria Dugina, was also on that list. And sadly, also a very, very good friend of mine, Manuel Oxenreiter, was on that list. Manuel was pronounced deceased in his house a year ago in Moscow due to heart failure. But now, after seeing his face on that website, I have doubts that he passed away in a normal way, I'm sorry to say.
Wow. And you, in fact, you just mentioned, Alexander Dugin's daughter. And, under Zelensky, nobody is speaking out against the fact that he has shut down all political opposition from the fringe left.
Even unions. He shut down unions.
That's the first time I've heard about that. So see, and nobody is speaking out against him. Yet anytime, Putin does this, and of course I denounce Putin when he does this, but anytime Putin does this, it is literally the end of the world, and Amnesty International, Human Rights Fraud, I'm sorry, Human Rights Watch, speak out against this. And these same people, they not only attempted they not only cheered on the attempted murder of Alexander Dugin, who I understand you actually know personally. He's actually a friend of yours, but they literally, danced on the grave of his daughter who was murdered, and you even said,
speaks a lot about the neo-Nazi morals and values. It's sick and sad and degenerate, and even if your worst enemy falls in battle while you are fighting against him, you don't desecrate the body, you don't make fun of that, you just move on, because he has a family despite the fact that he's your enemy. And I second a lot of ideas that you proposed, despite the fact that I don't really think that Salman Rushdie was really a writer or an author, or he brought anything new. But at the end of the day, as a Muslim Shia woman, we denounce any form of violence against anyone, even if that someone is my biggest enemy as a Muslim woman. And if you realize that Sayyid Ali Khamenei, my imam as a Muslim woman, the head of the religious supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, but he's not only the religious leader of the Islamic Republic, he's the religious leader of millions of Muslims across the world. He did not condone what happened, and basically the people circling him were actually speaking of something that was set up by the CIA that led to that happening, because Sayyid Ali Khamenei never reopened the fatwa of Sayyid Imam Ruhullah Khomeini. He never seconded, he did write about it, but he never issued a fatwa for that matter. And it just brings out the reality of not being violent towards people based on what they say, despite the fact that what they say is degenerate, is disrespectful, is against the, it's basically harassment against the religion of millions of people, billions of people, because, I mean, it's 1 billion plus Muslims around the world. So, but moving on and talking about what we are living in these days with the atrocities that are going on in the eastern part of the European continent, and the newly rejoining oblasts to Russia, their full right for referendum to rejoin their motherland. We're talking about the Donbass, the Kherson, also we're talking about Zaporozhye. These regions that held referendums, democratic referendums, as reported by our friends who are on the kill list of the neo-Nazis in Ukraine. We all watched it live. We saw how the people were standing since 5 a.m. in the morning waiting to cast their ballots to rejoin their motherland, which is their basic right, which is the same right that the United States of America is defending for its Kurdish allies in Iraq, for example, or in other parts of the world. But if it's in the interest of the United States, then it is international law. If it's not, then it's against the law, and it's a bad referendum, and it's cheating, and it's falsifying, and it's all the bad words that you can find in diplomacy. But I mean, I think we're over this, especially with the latest terrorist attack that will most definitely bring repercussions to the entire European continent, which is the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline, which happened to happen just 24 hours after US Navy drills were happening in that area. Surprise, surprise. I mean, and then let's put the blame on Russia, the actual country that built it, operated it, maintained it, and paid billions of dollars to make it happen.
Yeah.
But you know what really gets to me, Youri, is that Europeans have a memory of a fish. They forget. It is fun, but at the
True. It
same
is
time, I
true,
mean,
though.
it's their lives. Their lives that are at stake here. It's their future. It's the future of their children. And when you see how, since 6 years ago up until now, how the Western mainstream media, specifically the British and the American and the North American, the Canadian as well, mainstream media was attacking Germany and Angela Merkel herself, despite the fact that she did a lot of bad choices during her reign. But when she was working for the benefit of Europe and signed a lot of agreements with Russia concerning Nord Stream and gas and oil pipelines, the US was vocal against it, and you can see it in the papers. Just don't believe me. Go do your own research and see what the Americans were headed to. And if you also don't believe me, you could believe the President of the United States of America himself, Joe Biden, when he said that he replied to a reporter saying, "Believe us, we will stop it." If you don't believe me, you can go back to 2014 and listen to Condoleezza Rice saying that it has to be stopped and Europe should not be taking oil and gas from Russia that passes through Russia and Ukraine, and they have to be dependent, and these are her words, they have to be dependent on the North American supplies of gas and oil. So this is a strategic goal for the United States of America, and they're happy to meet that goal and achieve that goal through Europe by making Europe pay. They're not paying anything, whether it's in gas prices or in lives or in loss of soldiers. It is Europe who's paying the price. That's why you hear a lot of European leaders since yesterday when the charade of Zelensky of signing he signed some sort of a demand or a request to join NATO. Everyone was like, "Take your, hold your horses. It's not the time for it." The Europeans were saying that. I mean, Turkey has been trying to get on board the NATO. They're part of the NATO. They're trying to get on board the European Union since 22 to 25 years, and they're not allowed to, simply because they're a majority of a Muslim country. The majority of the population is Muslim, and Europe doesn't do that. But now Zelensky alone, from in front of a green screen, for the love of God, someone, billions of dollars being paid, someone buy him a new green screen. I'll be happy to pitch in to stop this charade.
Somebody else needs to buy him a new shirt and like a shaving thing.
I mean, it's a charade, and I know for a fact that European public do not believe that, and they do not accept that. The trendiest hashtag 2 days ago in Germany was "Our enemy is the United States," because they know that the US bombed that Nord Stream pipeline. They're the one who's going to suffer. They have been feeling the heat through the media over the past 6 to 7 years. They know what's going on. They've never had a problem with Russia before. I think that the US is punishing Germany the most, not to forget all of Europe, but why would the US root for a negotiations or a peace treaty between Europe and Russia, which could happen at any moment, because up until now, there's no real official war between Europe and Russia. It's between Russia and Ukraine. So why would the US cheer for Europe to sign a peace treaty, for the euro to regain its health and its to go back the way it was, but doing better than the US currency? Why would it cheer for a healthy European Union when it knows that a healthy European Union means a healthy European economy, which is the biggest threat for the US? Instead of looking at it from the positive,
the U.S. does not like the U.S. does not like competition. The U.S. likes monopolies. And
they don't want the Europeans to benefit from a pipeline that goes through land, which costs basically nothing compared to shipping them resources all the way across the pond from the United States and Canada towards Europe. They don't want that to happen. Europeans, I mean, they're not dumb, they're not stupid, they're well-educated people, well-informed people. They know that the United States of America is doing this for its own benefit, and they don't accept it, and it's their right not to accept it, which is why, my friend, we are looking at a couple years to come that will be vital for European politics. We will see a lot of revolutions. We will see a lot of people protesting the decisions made by the puppet governments in Europe that are servants and basically just puppets in the hands of the United States. And they will not accept to pay the bill of a war that the US is instigating.
One can only hope. I don't share the same optimism as you do, but hey, I'm willing to be hopeful because at the moment we don't have a huge anti-war movement. There are many Europeans.
Wait for it. October is gonna go, and we're still in October 1st. November is coming, December, January, and February, and it's the coldest months in Europe. And I think when the public suffers, when the working class suffers, their voices will be heard loud and all across Europe. And I think that governments will not be able to survive in front of the demands of the public that see no reason for all of this Russophobia, all of this policies that basically just ends up being paid or ends up being a burden to the European public working class.
And while we talk about cancel culture, I wanted your reflections on your friend Alexander Dugin and his daughter who was murdered, and demystify a little bit Alexander Dugin, because the first time I ever heard of him, a former contributor to Press TV, Eric Draster, who co-hosts Counterpunch Radio, and he depicted Alexander Dugin as this far right thinker. And then anytime people talk about Putin, and even though Putin himself is a right winger, socially conservative and fiscally conservative, there's a lot of junk that gets said about Putin. A lot of Putin's enemies are lionized as these wonderful liberals when they're actually also reactionary right wingers. So demystify a little bit Alexander Dugin for us, and share and talk about his daughter who did not I mean no one deserves really to be murdered, but for a woman like her who had absolutely nothing to do with whatever is happening between heads of states, talk about that.
First of all, Professor Alexander Dugin is a university professor, and he is a visiting professor at multiple universities in the region, especially in Asia, and he's a philosopher, he's a researcher. So basically, he's your everyday professor at any university that you can find across the world. There's no mystery around him. And all of these allegations that he decides for Putin, or he is Putin's brain, or that's nonsense. I mean, the man will laugh it off if he hears it. And if you follow his lectures, if you listen to him, if you hear what he's saying, he just has certain theories that he wrote about in his book, and basically his theories are anti-capitalist theories, like many other philosophers across history and nowadays. And he roots for a multicultural, multi-ethnic Russia, and he roots for a multicultural Asia, meaning that he wants a unification between the different diversified cultures that are found in Asia and in Eastern Europe as well, which he believes share a lot of values, actually share very similar morals and high grounds, and which could be basis for not only being allies, whether in
one moment. Apparently there's going to be a limit to to this. That's funny, because I thought, me being the co-host, we would not have this problem. Okay, wait, one moment. Okay, Mark, continue with what you were saying, and then invite me again to Zoom, and we'll just continue to try to do this conversation then. Marwa, you there? Uh-oh. Marwa, are you there? Sorry, 1+1 viewers, we're having some technical issues. Marwa, are you there? Okay. Okay. Good. You're back.
Youri?
Yeah. Okay. So apparently, the Zoom is going to kick me out. So I think I might need you to invite me again, make me the host again, and we'll just continue the conversation like that, and I'll edit it all back in. So okay. So before our 10 minutes wrap up, so you're saying about Alexander Dugin that actually he's not this far right winger and actually believes it. Well, yeah, just continue with what you're saying.
Anyone who offers a different view to the Western capitalist view is always seen as either a right wing or a lunatic or someone who's promoting a sort of ideology that is not accepted by Western values, whatever those values are. And I mean, you could just simply research the guy and read about his the fourth economic theory and learn about it. And when I saw him, I mean, the first time we met, it was in a conference in Lebanon. And it was really interesting. We were talking about the culture in Asia and specifically in the region where resistance factions have liberated their land and stood in the face of neocolonialism and imperialism. And one thing led to another. And then we were talking about economics and how the world, the capitalist world, actually, even if a movement liberates its land, it's still captive to the capitalist system of the world. And I asked him about his fourth economic theory, and I said that it's beautiful to read about, but even in Russia itself, it's hard to apply because Russia is a capitalist state. It's not a communist like the West would like to propagate. It's not. It is a social democracy, but it's also, its economy is based on. He laughed and he said that I agree with you. It's going to be hard to implement, but at the end of the day, it's a theory that I would like to test in my own community. And that's where that's our first encounter was. And then we met several times in different countries. But the man is not a right winger, is not a fascist, as the West is claiming. And again, don't take my word for it. You can go and research his ideas. And if you find some of his ideas to be radical or outside the Western values, then please define for me what the Western values are, and then let's debate about it. I mean, the US doesn't like Denmark or Sweden because they are social democracies. They want them to be pure capitalist market democracies, or even if not a democracy, they don't care as long as it's not a competition for the US. They don't like that England, for example, has free healthcare for its citizens because this opens the door for free healthcare debate in the United States of America, where it's a devastation for the public. People die because they're not able to call an ambulance. That's why people basically die in the US who don't have healthcare and insurance to cover them. So basically, demonizing is just another strategy that the West uses up, and it uses and abuses against anyone who has a different idea than that of what the imperial views and hegemony of the United States of America demand of what it sees as subordinates or tools or followers or part of its empire. This is one of 101 empire's strategy with dealing with what it sees as lesser nations or nations below its status. But that's not the case, and it's not going to be the case anymore. Everyone, especially in the third world, that and I don't like to use this word because this is a word
Yeah.
made up by the elites of this earth, because they loot our resources, they plan our future by taking over control of our governments, and then they demand that we follow suit to whatever guidelines they would like to put forward, and that's not going to happen anymore. And it's been a big part of our fight and our struggle across the second half of the past century. And I think that what's going on between Russia and Ukraine is the biggest evidence that no, a big no is being said in the face of the empire, and the empire doesn't like it.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the empire is it's so funny to see all of these far right governments and half of like the far right being against Putin, when I find they have way more in common with Putin than I have in common with Putin. I mean, like me and Putin, we probably can we'll get along when it comes to like Venezuela solidarity, Syrian solidarity, and Iranian solidarity, but Putin is capitalist and Putin is fairly socially conservative. So you would think that like the Republican Party of the United States and all of these far right, movements in Eastern Europe, some of them who had, who have governments in Eastern Europe, that they would get along great with Russia. But no, because Russia doesn't play its balls, because Russia is not an obedient servant to U.S.-led capitalism, they have to just have like an enemy and do this really eccentric divide and conquering routes.
I really think that this will make the Russian leadership rethink its strategy concerning its economy and concerning trade with neighboring countries, because they have found out the hard way that it's not going to work. And I think that's what President Putin was talking about when he said that basically he said that the power of the dollar, or the control of the dollar over the global market, is downward, and it's coming to an end, meaning that he has now different economic views. It might be, some people might say that it's a bit too late, but I think in the world of geopolitics, nothing is too late. It's the right move at the right time, and sometimes the right time doesn't fit everyone, and that's the reality. That's how life goes. So we'll just have to wait and see, but hopefully not a lot of lives are lost. I hope no lives would be lost during that process, but this is what war is, and we've learned this the hard way in our region.
And how is your friend Professor Dugin dealing with the brutal murder of his daughter?
I haven't had the chance to directly talk to him. I did send an email with condolences. I've never met his daughter, but I've followed a bit of the interview, especially after the crisis between Russia and Ukraine. And she was a very intelligent young lady with a lot of potential, and she was a proud Orthodox, which is no longer found in Western values, where if you are someone proud of your religion and of your ethical and moral high grounds, then you are not respected anymore. I don't know how that works. It's actually bizarre for me to understand.
Okay, we're about to be cut off, but I'll see you soon, either on Skype or again on Zoom.